Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Inclusion Starts Now, the podcast. Today, I have Kathleen Hema joining us today. And if you have seen her anywhere on social media, I am sure you have been blown away. She helps parents today have the sex talk with their kids. And as you will see, it is not just about sex. And this is so important, especially in the disabled community, to have these conversations early with our kids. So, we are going to talk to Kathleen about so many great things. Before we get to that, I just want to share really quickly that if you do not know, inclusionstartsnow.com, the website, has a whole tab of resources of online trainings that you can take to help prepare yourself for more inclusive practices in your school or home setting. So if you're interested, go to inclusionstartsnow.com and look at the services tab, and you will see a bunch of fun resources for you. Now, I would love to introduce to you my amazing friend, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you. I feel like it's been a year since we last spoke, so
Yeah,
this is really awesome.
yeah, it was too
Yeah.
long.
So I'm Kathleen Hema, and a lot of folks know me from online social media on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube as that woman who's telling parents to answer their kids' sex questions. But I didn't always used to have an online presence. I used to be a sex ed teacher in the classroom. I did that for over a decade, teaching kids of all ages, medically accurate and age appropriate sex ed. So over the past 10, well, over those 10 years of being in the classroom, I saw the disconnect. I saw the disconnect between what kids were asking me in the classroom and what parents thought their kids knew. So let me tell you a story to better
Yeah.
explain this. Okay. So I would host these things called parent nights. So when I would go into a school and I would go to teach the kids, before I would go into the classroom and start teaching the kids, the school, we required that the school had a parent night. And I would go to the parents and the parents of the kids that would be in my class, and I would tell the parents everything that I'm going to tell their kids. I would go through all of the lessons, the research behind it, and I would make sure they knew what was going to happen so that hopefully they continue the conversations at home. One parent night, they usually take about an hour. At the end, I asked, does anybody have any questions? And this father stood up, and he was a big man, he was a police officer, and he stood up and he was like, ma'am, do you have any kids? And at the time, I was like in my early 20s. I didn't have any kids. And I said, no, no, sir, I don't. And he goes, because if you did, you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be teaching your kid this stuff. And I was like, well, I think I would
Yeah.
because I know the research. I've gotten my degrees in this. I know what it is. And he's like, my kid is not interested in any of this stuff. And this particular school required all the students to take the class. So they said, we do this parent night not for you to take your kid out of it, but for you to understand what is happening. So the kid goes into the class. I end up teaching for a couple of weeks, and towards the end, there's this time, like at the end, this one student I remember asked the question, like, if we wanted to get on birth control, where could we go? And I said, that's a really great question. If you were thinking about having sex and wanting to get on birth control to prevent pregnancy or for other reasons, I would encourage you to talk to your parents because you can probably get it through your health insurance. And she was like, absolutely not. There's no way I'm asking my dad for birth control. And I was like, your dad, you say? And I look at the name and I remember his name and the
Yeah.
last names matched. And I was like, so you don't think your kid is interested in any of this stuff? And look at the question that she just asked
Mm-hmm.
me. So that is why I do what I do, because I know parents think that their kid is not interested in this stuff, but the questions kids asked show that they are. And I want to help parents not be like that father who is saying they're not interested, so I'm not having these talks with them, and actually help encourage them to have these talks.
I love that story so much. And I actually have I had the school cop, like the school security guard that we had.
Yeah.
He had kids, and this was at a time where I didn't. I was in my early 20s, like working my first teaching job. And I'm not even sure how that conversation came up, but I talked about how important it was to have like these sex education like conversations with kids. And that was his first question to me. He was like, "Do you have kids?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And he's like, "Well, you let me know how it changes when you have kids." And I can tell you right now that it has not changed at all. I mean, the
Same
only
for me.
difference that I would say changed from being a teacher to a parent was that I definitely was like, wow, I needed to be easier on parents. Like it is like I knew that it was hard being parents like all the time, and I was very aware
Yeah.
that being a teacher I got to leave, but
Yeah.
I that's the only thing that I'm like, yeah, they're and I felt like I am always easy on parents as well. I understood. But anyways, the sex education thing, I just remember him saying that to me and I was like, no, I still feel pretty confident that like kids need to be able to have these conversations and like for her to already know that her dad would not want to talk to her about it. Like
Exactly.
I'm sure so many kids feel that way where there's like, they feel embarrassed about talking about something or that like they shouldn't be feeling these things. Like I feel like they learn that first from how their parents respond. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I would even say at the very beginning when they're really little kids and they might start like touching themselves. And if a parent's first response is like, "Oh my God, don't do that. What are you doing?" Like, they're learning very early on, like, "Oh, why is this like a bad thing to do?" Like that,
Right.
like they're already learning that, like, you know, why am I not supposed to be saying this? Like, why am I not allowed to scream penis at the grocery store? Or like, why am I not allowed to run around naked? It's like you learn those so early.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
no, and it is. I completely agree with you. Yes, parenting is harder than I ever imagined. But I now have kids, and what I taught in the classroom, I absolutely will teach my kids. I'm actually, the things that we taught in the classroom, because of the way the sex education mandates in the state were set up, were actually quite late. Like the kids were actually by the time the puberty lesson was happening, you know, the majority of them had already started puberty and you could tell that they had already started
yeah.
puberty and were going through some major changes while they were in the class. So I actually think some of this stuff needs to happen earlier, and I'm having these discussions with my own kids earlier. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had so many friends tell me that they know people who have like kids who have started their periods like in second or third grade or something. I mean,
it
I feel
is
like
early.
that is really early. And I'm like, if you had no idea that like a period was going to happen, I mean, I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were and then all of a sudden I'm bleeding where I'm like usually peeing, like I think that would
Yeah.
be, well,
That would be very
you know what I
scary.
mean.
Yes. Very, very scary. And I think, yeah, I think that's one of the things where it's trying to help parents see that these talks can be had in a way that doesn't make them scary, that actually is not too much information too soon. That's a common
Yeah.
phrase I hear parents telling me, and showing them how to actually layer the talks, right? How to actually have these talks in a way that when you know what the end result is for your kids, what you want them to have, and most of the times when I ask parents this question, what is it that you want your kids to have? What is it that you want them to take away from all these sex talks over the years? And they're like, well, like not do it, but they say that jokingly, like they know their kid's going to have sex
Yeah.
eventually, right? And they're like, well, I want them to, be in a healthy relationship. And, they talk about all these things that are tangential, right? And that, can make for a really good, healthy sex life. I'm like, okay, good. So if that's the end goal, here's how we get there, right? You
Yeah.
can't start having the talks at 13 and expect it to be completely healthy in 3 years, right? If we
Yeah.
start now and we have these talks, and how a talk about friendship and a talk about including other kids when you play, or what makes a friend, you know a toxic friendship, or what makes it unhealthy, or if they make you feel bad all the time, or they're asking you to lie for them, is that a healthy friendship? And you
Yeah.
start there, you could see how that could build into a conversation about relationships in the
Yeah.
future.
Well, I loved
So
how
yeah,
you said you teach it age appropriately and medically
accurately.
accurately, which I that's where usually my conversations start with people that I'm like, when I say sex education, I'm not telling my 3 and 4 year old about the different types of sex, or of intercourse. Like I'm teaching
Mhm.
them about their body and like consent and relationships and like public and private places, locations.
Great.
Um, do you call that something else than sex education?
That's a
Because
good
I
question.
have had this as a request of like, can we
Yeah.
rebrand it? And I'm like,
Can we
I don't
rebrand?
know.
Yes. You're onto something, because I think a lot of sex educators in this space, they are. I'm hearing things like body safety education, puberty and health education, healthy relationships education. And these are all things I hear other people who call themselves sex educators calling this topic. And all of these terms I feel are trying to take the sex out of it. And I can see why they're trying to do that. I can see why they're trying to say this is, we're not really talking about sex, but I'm actually trying to get parents to focus on how to lay a foundation to eventually have the sex talk, like, and actually
Mm,
teach what is sex. So I'm not trying to avoid that talk. I'm not trying to push it down the road. I actually want parents to think, okay, I will be having the sex talk soon. Maybe it's in like the next 3 years. What am I doing right now to get ready for it?
yeah,
And then we can talk about all the things to get ready for it. So yeah, I've kind of thought about like rebranding. Should we call it something else? But that's where I've fallen on this. I'm not
yeah,
changing it at this point. I think making parents uncomfortable, if they feel uncomfortable with using the word sex, is probably a good place to start. Why are we
yeah.
uncomfortable about it?
I completely agree that
Yeah.
when people do feel uncomfortable about like talking about anything, because like all those things all those other names, it just made me think of like subcategories of sex
Yeah.
education, that it's like you do need all of those conversations because you're building to this big topic that is like a really big topic that we have not always openly talked about in a safe way.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, like consent alone, that's something we are constantly working on with our kids, and especially like fostering and having more kids. It's like, I want
Yeah.
everyone to know that they can feel safe saying no, and you will like never be in trouble for that. And I feel like knowing that at like the ages of 3 is going to just keep building. So then you'll
Hmm.
become, 13, 16, 20 years old, and you're not going to feel this like obligation or like, I don't know, I guess I should just do it. Where like if you're not feeling, like if you don't want to consent, like you now know, like I mean, I just can't even imagine in 10 years what my kids are going to be saying. Like
Right.
already with their understanding at like 3 and 4 years old, I'm like, man,
It's
what are
totally
you gonna
hard to
say?
think down the line like that, especially when you're in the thick of it like you are. Like when I was in the thick of it when my kids were like 2 and 4, it was exhausting. Like, it's like, really, do we have to focus on building your bodily autonomy right now when you don't want to change your diaper and it smells really bad? But
Hmm.
like it's that part of parenting that is a part of parenting, right? Like, you want to build this, you want to continue to have their bodily autonomy. You know that by doing this now is going to help them to say no to somebody if they're pushing them or peer pressuring them, whether it's sexual or not.
Yeah.
And you're building those skills, right? I feel many times when parents like yourself are exhausted, you're doing good, right? You're doing good because you're actually building a human being, not just parenting a kid.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, man. It is at the thick of it. It is definitely um I mean, like just everything that you said, because there are so many times where it's like, okay, it's time to go to the bathroom. Like the steps of like, yep, you can lock the door. Like, yeah, you should lock the door. We're in a public place. Like, yeah, go to the bathroom. Okay, now we're gonna like wash our hands. Like, no, we shouldn't look under the stalls. Like when there's, we don't know who that person is. Like, we should respect their privacy. Like the
Right,
ongoing conversations that like I would say all of that it's like describing the social norms of like our
right.
of what our society, our culture is doing like in public bathrooms and having that open conversation. I had this friend once who was like, yeah, my like her little girl would keep like lifting up her dress to show everyone her underwear when she potty trained because she was like so proud of herself. And so she kept
Hmm.
being like, I'm wearing undies, like to,
Hmm.
strangers at the airport. And to me, I was like, well, like that's something to be like, yeah, I'm so proud of you for wearing like, your underwear. But we also don't like we shouldn't do this. Like if you want to like, like I was just trying to think of like how can we set boundaries around that? Because like,
Hmm.
yeah, we don't want to like encourage her like going out to the airport and like lifting up her dress as like a 4-year old. But
Yeah,
like, how can we have a conversation where it's not like shaming her for like being
right.
proud, but like also giving her the information of like why we humans do what we do,
Yeah.
which I feel like a lot of people just struggle with. But I really like your reflection. Is that something that you offer in all your services that you provide, like
Always.
the parent reflection piece?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a part of my main uh, my main video guide is Top Talks because Top Talks is for a parent who reaches out to me and they're like, I follow you on Instagram and TikTok and I've seen your videos and I didn't know I was supposed to be having the sex talk with my 7, 8, or 9-year old. And I kind of have thought that was going to be in the preteen years. And now that you're saying all of this stuff, like if I tell them what sex is it going to make them want to try it? And there's this idea behind a lot of parents who think if I say this, they're going to be so curious about it that they're going to want to try it. And there's a lot of research that says absolutely not. It's not how it works when it comes to learning about sex. The majority of kids who learn about sex and sexuality in a medically accurate way, in an age appropriate way, don't engage in sex early. It's actually the complete opposite. It's been shown to delay sexual initiation, which, to put another way, is delaying the first time they have sex. And this is something that when parents find it, they're like, okay. And then they are like, okay, but how does that work? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's building your confidence to have this talk, right? It's about you knowing exactly what to say and why you're saying it. So why did you all of a sudden from a few Instagram reels, reach out to me and say, I need to get information on this? They're like, well, I don't want them to be sexually abused. That's usually a very
Mm-hmm.
first one, because the rates of child sexual abuse are very high. And most of the time, it's due to kids not knowing what sex is or how to say no, or, feeling like they're not allowed. They have to keep a secret. There's a lot of tactics that abusers use. And so when I break it down for parents, I kind of break it down like uh, teaching your kid math, right? So you found me, you're like, okay, I got to teach my kid what sex is. Um, you're not going to jump into sex. You're not going to jump into that talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like math. You're not going to jump into teaching your kid division, right? When you say, okay, my kid is 4, let's learn division. No, you're going to be like, okay, maybe we should learn your numbers. What is this number? What is this number? And then how many oranges are in this basket? And then they learn to count the numbers, right? And they correlate that number to that amount, right? So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of bridge building
I
here. And
love that comparison.
yeah. So like I call it layering. You layer
Yeah.
the information age appropriately. And if they don't quite get it, you don't just tell them one time. No, you're going to
Yeah.
repeat this information over the course of that year with them. And then once you feel they have a solid understanding, you're going to jump into addition. So now if you have two apples and two apples, what does that make, right? If you have the
Yeah.
number two and the number two, what does that make? And this is that layering. We do it with everything else. And I try to show parents, and this is what I show parents in Top Talks, is that you can do it with sex education as well.
I
Yeah.
mean, that makes so much sense. I love like just the layering because it's like okay, so I think a lot about, especially just because like where I am in parenting, it's a lot about like we don't use nicknames for genitals, and we don't, and like even if they say no to me, it's not like, they're like, no, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, well, you're doing it because I'm your mom. Like, it's like, okay, well, why don't you want to do it? Like, do you see we're trying to get somewhere? If you want to get somewhere, we got to put your seatbelt on. Like, we got to be
Yeah.
safe. And my job is to keep you safe. Like, it's this whole talking through and working it out. And like, I do feel like all those layers, as exhausting as they are as the parent doing it, I mean, I've already seen my kids be able to like, say no to a stranger. Like we have had stranger like at the park or like a new doctor or
Yeah.
something, like go to tickle them and then one of them will be like, "No, I don't want that." And the doctor will be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like and they'll stop, but I'm just like, "Oh, cool." Like for
Yeah.
you guys, like I don't know if I ever would have done that as a kid. Like that's
Yeah.
just not
It's
something I don't
empowering
know.
seeing your kid, especially a
Yeah.
four-year-old say that. I mean, I loved it when my kid was 3. I was actually in the other room. I must have been like cleaning the dishes or something, and my husband was reading her a book. And at the end of the book, he must have like cuddled her and gave her a kiss and said, "That was really fun. Go get another book." And I heard, "You didn't ask if you could give me a kiss." And I was like, I dropped everything. Like, oh my gosh, everything I've been doing is working. Like I'm a stay-at-home mom, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, my child has
It
learned
feels
something.
so good. Like
Yeah.
seeing because I've also my last year teaching was with seventh graders, and it was a group of seventh grade boys, and they were all very interested in like their genitals. They were touching each other inappropriately, and I was like,
Mm.
we are not getting like, are you guys getting sex education? You guys are in seventh grade. Like we need to have this like so I had to send letters home to parents telling them I was going to do like an accommodated thing, modified, I don't know, I mess up those words a
Yeah.
lot. Um, Curriculum that I had like a friend from my school made. And we practiced saying no to each other because it was like with hugs or handshakes or something. I was like, we're all going to practice saying no. So someone's going to reach out for a handshake, and I want you to practice saying like, no, thank you, or no, I'm good, whatever, or no, whatever you wanted to say. And I had one student who just like did not like to say no. He even said, he was like, "Well, I don't want to hurt their feelings." And I'm like, if you're not comfortable, you can say no. It doesn't matter how they feel. Like we want you to feel safe. And
Mhm.
it was just kind of it was just like sad to hear from like seventh graders. And I mean, these boys were mostly autistic and all had some form of communication, like verbal communication, but it was still like, and I feel like this a lot within like the disabled community, that there was so much like parent involvement or just adult involvement, that like the area of like consent or like having to rely on someone to take you to the bathroom, like it kind of changes all those things. And I know a lot of people who don't know how to talk about sex education with their kids with like significant disabilities. Have
Mhm.
you ran into this? I know we talked about this like a year ago, but have you ran
Yeah.
into this like working in the field?
There's a gap for sure when it comes to children with living with disabilities and sex education. The problem, I think, is that the disability spectrum is so grand, right? Like, so you
Mhm.
can't just say, here's a curriculum based on age and the development of this, because the autism spectrum is so different, right?
Yeah.
And so I haven't found anything that is really great because everything is kind of applied based on a case by case basis. So tell me about your kid, tell me about their disability, tell me about how you've handled different things in the past, tell me what your goal is, and how do you teach them not to touch the stove, or not to, like, how do you teach them things to keep themselves healthy and safe? And then we can work
Hmm.
from there, and we can kind of develop a plan for your kid. But I have found, unfortunately, that it's ever like since having you on and trying to get more resources for parents with kids with disabilities, it's really not great. I don't have much more to share than I did last year.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is like I mean I feel like getting the education from you of just like the importance of like the different layers to have those conversations with kids and then basically like modifying it to your child. But even
Mm-hmm.
that being said, I know a lot of people talk about like, well, cognitively they're testing at this level or something. And to me, I'm like, well, their body is 14 years old. So I don't care if their cognitive test says that they're 3. First
Mm-hmm.
off, those tests suck. They're not accurate. And second, they are a 14-year-old. Like, you are going to need to have conversations. And no, you're probably not going to be talking about, like, I mean, like what you said, you're not just going to jump in and have this conversation about sex with a 14-year-old who might have never even learned about relationships. Like, how, like what you were saying with friendships, I feel like I'm going to start using that example more often when I talk to people because it's like, you do need to be able to have like healthy friendships before like jumping to that next part of like um having a like a love relationship. I don't know. Oh,
For
romantic. I was like,
sure.
what do you call that?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the thing that I have kids in the intermediate age, and my daughter is 9. And so she is at this age where, there is crushes and there is talks she was very curious more about Valentine's Day and all of that stuff. And it is not something that is a part of sex education, generally speaking. It's not
Hmm.
something that is taught to third and fourth graders because it's just there's so much to be taught right at that age that it's kind of like, oh, they'll learn that eventually. They don't need to know it now. But it's really a crucial time. And so this is why I developed in Top Talks, like, of course, I talk about sex and masturbation and porn and where do babies come from, but there's also puberty and relationships. And we spend a lot on how to talk about crushes with your 7 or 8 or 9 year old, how to talk about healthy, unhealthy, and toxic friendships, because it's really important for them to recognize in a friend who's treating them badly, right?
Yeah.
Like that, if a friend is making you feel this way, are they really a friend? Or are they someone who is using you right now, but when their other friend comes, they don't want to be with you? And how
Yeah.
does that make you feel? Right? Like these are all conversations
Yeah.
that you and I as adults can clearly see this being a relationship talk down the
Yeah.
road. But it's so much easier for them to recognize these negative and unhealthy relationship qualities when there's no sex involved and there's no hormones involved and there's no love involved,
Yeah.
like in a
Oh my
friend.
gosh. This is like blowing my mind because I feel like I keep talking about like boundaries. That's been my really big I've been like I love nonfiction reading and I've been reading all these like boundary books and culture books, but a lot of it is like how like I will create this safe place for myself basically of like creating boundaries and it like talks about relationships because you talk about like if this person's not going to respect the boundaries I'm making and if I'm not willing to also like if if neither of us are willing to compromise then that relationship might be coming to an end and it's kind of interesting because I don't think I like really have worded it that way. Like I think I usually word it of like putting it a lot on the person of like, if you're not feeling safe, like if like you need to put these boundaries. Like it's like all this
Mhm.
responsibility on you, but it's also like, if someone is in
Just
your life,
recognizing.
like recognizing that is also like a
Yeah.
huge step of that. And I feel like
Yes.
I'm like bypassing that. I don't know. This
Well,
is making me think
yes.
already.
Let it absorb, right? Let it absorb, let it sit. I mean,
Yeah.
your kids are young, so you still have time, but this is why I love when parents reach out to me early. Like, and they say, I've got a 4-year-old and I'm really interested. They haven't asked where babies come from yet, but I'm, reading your stuff. And because I also have like top talks for 7, 8, and 9 and up. But then I also have the early talks, the complete guide to the early talks for 4, 5, and 6. And it's really getting parents starting to feel comfortable, thinking ahead,
Yeah.
getting ready for what's to come. But when it's so much simpler, right? At this age, everything is a very factual answer, and you got to know why you're giving them this answer because they ask
Hmm.
why.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I love this so much. I feel like I learn so much from you. Like every time you post, every time I talk to you, you are just a
You
wealth of information.
I love following you. You bring so much positivity and just I mean, I feel like I'm like super loud on here and you're like the calm voice. So you're bringing me down, like be calm. It's okay. We don't have to scream at people because I
That's
already talk loud already.
I would so this was that like my quiet voice was always like a weird I don't want to say barrier, but it was like this weird challenge as a teacher, like trying to get everyone's attention to be like, "Hey, come on over here," or something. Like my yelling, I don't know why. I like am not I don't have that. I wish I did because I love your voice. Wish I could be like louder to get people's attention who are like all the way across on the other side of the playground and I'm like, "Hey." But no, I have no idea. It is like and I've also thought that I think that I yell and people are like, "I've never heard you yell." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I
Yeah.
have, but I guess it's not very loud."
Yeah. I don't think you can yell, Kayla. I don't know. I don't see that in you.
Yeah, I don't know. Even though my oldest did say that sometimes it's so loud I hurt her ears. And I'm like, "Okay,
Okay.
well, apparently one person thinks I yell."
Yeah.
And it's really hard sometimes and I'm like, "I'm not yelling. I'm just
I know.
mad."
I know. When they
But you
tell
can
us you're
tell.
yelling, yeah. And I'm like, this is not yelling. You want to hear what yelling is? Like, you want to go into that old school parenting.
Yes. Oh, I can definitely, especially when all the whys start happening.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
definitely been times I'm just like, because I said so, can we just please
I
go?
know.
Um, okay. I do want to circle back just really quick because you did talk a little bit about how there's all these studies that show, um, that kids, like giving them this information helps with like not abusing, like not, uh, like abusing or like not having sex early and like being more, I guess, mindful about it. Um, do you have any like specific studies that you could share or like maybe kind of just talk about studies and how convincing
Yeah, I
people
mean,
how important this
I
is?
can send you some studies. Like, I don't know the names of the authors right off the top of my head, but I do have them. So
Yeah.
I can absolutely email them to you. Like, basically, all of the studies that have been done are not with parents. So it's really hard to control a home environment unless you're just doing an observation and you have a very specific thing that is being controlled. So a lot of the studies are done in classroom situations with students where students will receive this one curriculum that is usually comprehensive. And what they mean by comprehensive is that they're talking about abstinence as a form of birth control, as well as condoms and barrier methods, and as well as hormonal birth control, as ways to prevent an unintended pregnancy and ways to prevent STIs. So that's your comprehensive approach. And then you have the other approach, which is you just talk about abstinence or you talk about like healthy relationships, but you don't really talk about like barrier methods and things like that.
Hmm.
So when they talk about, they do these studies in comparing groups. So sometimes they'll ask the questions, have you had sex already? And then they compare it to the after. And what they have found is the ones who said, like, I don't have sex, I've never had sex, when they do the 3 month, 6 month, 1 year follow up, they're still not having sex who've done the comprehensive. And the ones who have more times often than not have engaged in sexual activity. The ones in the comprehensive who learn about barrier methods and hormonal methods, when they say, have you had unprotected sex 3, 6 a year later? It's like, no. And then the other ones,
Yeah.
there's higher. So that's really what they're comparing when they talk about comprehensive versus not sex education. And so when we try to pull this for parents to use, it's really about parents talking about everything. So saying, when your kid gets to the age where you're talking about birth control and STIs, like that's what a lot of parents think are the sex talks, but there's so many things that happen before then that like when you get there, it's actually super easy to have that
Yeah.
conversation because you've already laid the groundwork and they're already like, I'm not having sex. There's so much like to it and I don't have time for all that stuff and it's gross and I don't want to and they've already made the decision because you've already been having conversations with them where
Hmm.
you have shared information with them in a way that helps them to make a healthy and informed decision for themselves without it feeling like you're telling them not to have sex because you've been so open with them in providing them with
Yeah.
information for them to get there. And that's like basic communication psychological theory, right? When someone tells you what to do or what not to do, you're like, whoa, 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 I think I can make my own decision here.
Yeah.
But when you say, hey, let me tell you why, I do this way, or let me tell you why I would prefer you to wait, right? And you put it like that and you give reasoning, then it feels like, well, your reasons are pretty valid. I didn't think of that. Or,
Yeah.
and
You
and
know,
that's yeah,
this is making me think a lot about like LGBTQ plus information that I feel like a lot of states are trying to put into their sex education. Have you seen any studies on that? As Pride Month is like next month,
next
I
yeah.
feel like I should have really thought about this before
Ah,
I.
that's a really good question. So yeah, so when you present, and this is what I do when I present information on all of my platforms, is like when there was back in the 90s when you had virginity pledges, when you had abstinence only until marriage sex education, which I think is still being done in some states. Um, when you put it like that, what tends to happen is LGBT students will zone out because they don't think it applies to them. They're like, I'm never getting married. Well, this was, before
Yeah.
gay marriage was legalized, right? Like, I'm never getting married, so it doesn't matter to me. Or I can't get pregnant because I don't do that. But then they're like, they don't really focus in on other barrier methods of or getting tested on a regular basis or those kinds of things. So they do tend to zone out. And so when you go to have conversations, that's why using, genderless terms and just using penis into vagina or penis into anus. And you just use that and say, okay, what kinds of barrier methods could be used in this type of sex to protect your health, to prevent the spread of, right? Then they focus because
Yeah.
then it applies to them.
And
So
I
yeah, so
think it's so important for everyone to understand how it works for everyone. Like when when I started dating my husband, I told him at the beginning, I'm like, if we had all girls, like I would expect them to be comfortable to come to you and talk about periods and like puberty for their bodies. And just like as if we have boys, I would expect them, or if they're like different gender identity or whatever, I'm like, no matter what the problem or the question is that the child has, I want them to be able to come to both of us and get like this good answer. Like, I don't want it to be like girls talk to the mom, boys talk to the dad, like, because I just don't think that's what it should ever be. Like, we all
yeah.
are, or most of us are going through puberty. We are all humans and most likely will be sexual beings or are sexual beings. Like, and I think it's
Wait a
when
minute.
like
You
people,
said
what?
yeah, sorry. You just said most of us will go through puberty. Are
Well,
there
I
people
don't
that
know
don't
if
go
like
through
people,
puberty?
Okay, I only said that because I knew this one girl in high school who like her ovaries didn't develop or something, and so she told me that she wouldn't be going through puberty, that she was like she wouldn't
Ah,
be able to get a period. She doesn't have like pubic hair. She or like hair in
okay.
her armpits. I don't know how common that is. I usually don't say all or never because, there's
Right,
always
because
like some
it's
sort of outlier.
some sort of
But that is
exception. Yeah.
it would be very rare
It
to
probably, yeah, you're probably right that there are some health conditions, yeah, or
yeah.
diagnoses that would, yeah, inhibit puberty. But okay, yeah, sorry, go
But like
ahead, go ahead.
I know that's the only reason why I said it. It's really hard for me to like not I would say this is like the inclusion brain problem that it's hard for me to not say everyone because there's
Yeah,
always going to be one person that's like I don't like it because of this or whatever.
I totally get that. I'm on
But
social media, so yeah,
yeah,
there's always one
it's
person.
messed with that brain. Um, but yeah, but I feel like we should all understand what our human body is doing. Like what is a
Yeah.
basic thing that the human body like needs and goes through. I feel like we should all understand that and be able to talk about it.
For sure.
Whew.
And it's natural to be curious about like the
Yeah.
body, your own body and others' bodies. And I think when you embrace that curiosity from an early on and talk about like, through age appropriate books, through age, like, answering their questions. And like, I went through the puberty topics in a jar with my kid.
I
And this is like
love
a
that.
jar, like yeah. So I just to quickly like tell
Yeah.
people the puberty topics in a jar was this way of me to talk about puberty with my 8-year-old without like reading another book. Like I love books are great, but I was just like kind of sick of just always using a book to talk about where do babies come from and like
Yeah.
everything. And so I created this jar and it's 30 puberty related questions. And what we did is just every day she would pull out a question. She would read the question, and I would tell her, take a guess. What do you think the answer is? And then the answer is right on the back. And so then we, would read it. So the one question was, what's an erection? And she was like, I have no idea. And so we read through it and she was like, oh, that's really weird. I was like, yeah, so that's not weird, but it's
Yeah.
something that happens to a person with a penis. And this isn't something like to be embarrassed about, but they might be, just like if you got your period, right? And it messed up your clothes or something. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's to know that that's a natural, normal part of the body, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of those things where when you can understand and relate and it's not foreign, you can appreciate and you can say, no need to be embarrassed. It's okay. It's natural.
Yeah.
It happens, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that so much. I seriously could ask you like a million more questions, but we're gonna do our tarot card reading
Okay.
so I can respect all of our time because I seriously
I
don't.
love talking to you too. So maybe we meet back in a year and we do it on my podcast. So who knows?
Yes, every year we will have to like reconvene.
I
Um,
love it.
oh man. Okay. So you can ask a question or I can just pull a card. Totally
Okay.
up to you.
Totally up to me. Okay. Oh,
And I don't
what
usually I
question
have a
should I
little
ask?
cheat sheet, so I might just have to read my book.
All right. So this could be about anything.
Yes.
It, um, are there how are parents going to be getting more comfortable talking to their kids about sex in the
Let's
future?
see.
Please be
We
good.
have the Page of Swords, cute little cat holding
Okay.
a sword. Okay. This feels good. This feels like successful from just looking
I
at it.
hope so. I
It
hope
looks like
so.
the cat's happy. Oh, sword is so it's like fire, earth, water, air, all the symbols for tarot, which I just learned about. I actually had someone on my podcast to educate me. But swords are strength and power. So
Nice.
that's good. Now I just got to go find the page that has the
Cute
thing.
cats.
Do I have cats? No.
No, I said the cute cats from the
Oh,
tarot card.
they are very cute. I'm actually, weirdly enough, not like the biggest pet person. Um, because I'm more
I'm
of
with
a kid person, you
Same.
know?
I just pet sitted a cat, and my kids absolutely loved the cat. And I am so happy that the cat is back with his mommy.
Yeah, I feel that
I
a
don't
lot.
mind pet sitting. I think pet sitting is fine. A couple weeks here and there, my kids get their fill. It's good. It's kind of like babysitting. Now that I don't have babies, I'm happy to take care of your little baby for a couple hours and then give it back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I we just got a dog a few months ago, and most people that know me are just like, like they're like shocked. They're like, "You got a dog?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." Like, I don't know, the whole family wanted a dog. I'm not going to be like the Debbie Downer. And we love the dog, but I keep forgetting that we have one where like this last weekend we were going out of town, and I was just like, "Yeah, let's go." And then Josh was like, "So what are we going to do with the dog?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Dog.
Like, and so then I thankfully the dog came with us. And it
Yeah.
was great. Anyways,
There's
okay.
always, it would all work out.
It worked out. It worked out. So, the page holds his sword to the sky as a call to action. Your ideas and energy are nonstop. Share and communicate your thoughts with others. Find ways to focus and follow through. You don't want to burn out too quickly and abandon this brilliance. And it's all about communication and quick thinking. So,
Well,
that
that
feels
makes me
like
feel good.
that feels good. I mean, I feel
That
like
feels really good.
you're in the right place. Every person that I share, like anytime I have a friend who like is going through like a situation with their kids and they don't know how to talk about something that I feel like is in the sex education realm, I'm like, you need to go follow my friend on Instagram, or I guess I should start saying your YouTube because you actually have like the videos, like
Yeah.
real videos,
Yeah, my videos are on
short ones.
YouTube are my like teacher
Yeah.
mode videos. And so Instagram, people enjoy the quick snippets of stuff.
Hmm.
But yes, if you are looking for information, I mean, I always have like my guides, my puberty topics, my resources that are paid on my website. But my videos, I put a lot of free information out there. So yes, go watch my YouTube. I earn ads every now and then when they're not demonetizing me. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, like yeah, it helps me, and that's why I do it. So yeah, if you find the information useful on YouTube, then come check out some of the stuff that I do for for pay, as this is a business, and you're probably gonna just like it's more streamlined when you pay for it than my YouTube's. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything is just under Kathleen Hema.
Hema. Yeah,
Hema.
Kathleen Hema. So kathleenhema.com. You can find me on Instagram at the Kathleen Hema, on TikTok at the Kathleen Hema, and then of course on YouTube, just Kathleen Hema.
Perfect. I'll make sure all of that is below so people can find you. And oh my
Yeah.
gosh, thank you so much. I seriously feel like
Oh,
my brain like gets smarter every time I talk to you.
awesome. And I'm just going to say one last thing. If any
Yeah.
parent has found any of this information useful and they're like, how do I start? I have a free guide on my website called the Sex Talk Starter Pack. And it gives you the basics to answering the four most common questions from kids between the ages of 4 and 16. So if you go there, you can download the Sex Talk Starter Pack for free. And you can read kind of like the basic script to start answering those questions. And if you find that useful, then yes, definitely give me a follow.
Oh, that's so amazing. Wait,
Yeah.
ah, I just love you so
Thank
much.
you. I love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everybody who joined us today. If you are interested in contacting Kathleen, look in the show notes below. She is on social media as the Kathleen Hema. And so just every conversation I have with her, I leave being able to reflect on my parenting and feeling positive that I am the best parent for my kid. And I know that she will do that for you too. Um, so the more we know, inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help. See you next week.